So, welcome back to another episode. And I tell you, there is somebody in this world that I am sick and tired of. One person, my friend Andrew. I have been talking about him for nearly 7 years on the show, and I am sick to death of him. He's the guy who screwed me out of my childhood. He did. He's the guy who got every single game on my street before me, and I'm telling you, it drove me crazy. Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, Metroid, Super Metroid, Zelda, Ghostbusters. I freaking hate this fucking guy. What the hell?
Silence! Enough of your sniveling! It's not my fault my allowance was higher than yours!
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Everybody, after 7 years, my friend Andrew is finally here. I can't believe it, and there's a reason for it. Andrew lives in California, and you moved out there probably, when I was 20 years old, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I went down there at the 1999.
And we have known each other for nearly 30 years. You moved into my neighborhood in what year was that?
Yeah, we moved down the street in 1987, summer.
Yeah.
And I can remember one of the first things I unpacked was my Apple IIe computer.
Wow.
And I was on the couch downstairs playing Bard's Tale 2.
That's great.
And within, I guess, the first day or two, Johnny and some of the other kids in the neighborhood came down and started knocking on the door.
It was pretty wild because when new kids would come into your neighborhood, you're like, oh my god, who are these guys, you know? And I was a horrible kid, okay? I was a horrible kid, so...
Yeah, you had your moments.
I had definitely moments, but there's Andrew and his brother, and I penned everybody with nicknames in the neighborhood, so I called them like Fig Newton Fatso and Hippo Lewis.
I was Hippo Lewis.
And he still uses that to this day. That's your PSN name.
That's my gamer tag, Steam and PSN.
That's so damn. I was such a horrible kid, but I think what attracted me to you guys is that you were video gamers. I came over to your place, and you had something that I didn't have, and that was a computer.
Now, everybody has to remember that what it meant to be a gamer in 1987 was nothing like what it means today. Today, we've got cabinets full of systems and shelves full of games and things like that. That's not how it worked in 1987.
No.
When I moved, the NES hadn't even launched in North America yet.
Yeah.
So I came and I had my Apple IIe and I had the Intellivision. That was what we had in terms of a home console.
Yeah.
And that was where it all started.
It wasn't. You know, what was cool is I would go down the street to Andrew's place, and since I didn't have a computer, all my experiences back then, like looking at the computer and stuff like that, was at your place, like video gaming on a computer, like checking out Ultima, Bard's Tale, Leisure Suit Larry, you know, then the Police Quest series, all those things. I have so many memories of coming to your place and seeing that. And to be honest, back then it was like magic getting these things to work. I was like, how do you even get these things to boot up? You're like typing all this stuff to make this show up on my... I didn't get it. I was an idiot with computers back then. I really didn't understand.
And we didn't have anything like Steam where it's just sort of a one click and the game pops up. Nothing like that. There was some effort involved and swapping discs back and forth. Some of you I'm sure remember that.
Yeah.
It's a different world.
That's crazy. And we share a really incredible moment in video gaming history for consoles, is that we were both living on the same street and our friends, mutual friends, the Catos, went off for the summer. I've told this story many times, but I finally had somebody to collaborate the story with. So the Catos came back from the States and me and Andrew got together and we went over to visit them. We knocked on their door.
And I lived next door to the Catos, and John was a little further down the street.
Yeah.
So we knew exactly when James and JD came back.
Yeah, we're like, hey, we're like dogs at their door. Hey, they're back. What are they doing? And we knocked on their door, and they were very kind of standoffish with us. They were kind of strange, and they were like, oh, yeah, like, you know, did you guys get anything cool? Like, oh,
if I remember correctly, didn't we have to go around the back and knock on the sliding glass door
to finally
for them to let us in?
Yeah, we were knocking forever. We knew they were down there. We could hear people screaming and having a hilarious amounts of fun in this goddamn basement.
The car was in the driveway, so we knew they were back from their trip, and we knew what they were going to do on their trip.
Yeah.
We didn't know the full extent, but we knew one of the things they were going to come back with.
We thought so. We had ideas about it, but we weren't 100% sure.
And we were not going to be denied.
No, we were not going to be denied. And so they came up and they're like, oh, yeah, we had a good time, all this kind of thing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, and I started rambling on saying, oh, my God, Phantasy Star, I've seen television commercials, I can't wait to play that game one day. And then they just both looked at each other and like, should we tell them? And we're like, tell us what? Like, what are you talking about here? And they're like, oh, fine, come on down. And we get led into this dark, damp, spiraling staircase down. It felt like you were going 100,000 feet into this dark basement. And we got down there, and I swear to God, it was Nirvana.
Yes.
It really was. There's a bunch of guys on one TV playing some stuff, but everybody was, around this Commodore monitor.
That's right. Yes.
I have a Commodore. Look at that.
Oh,
I have one of those
wow.
right here. I'll pull it out one time on the show. But they were all around that monitor, right?
Yeah. I mean, there was a TV in the sort of the living room down there, and then I guess it was a computer area where they had the Commodore, but they had pulled the Commodore and set it to the side, and they were running what was a Sega Master System on the Commodore monitor.
And honestly, that monitor is a beautiful looking little monitor.
For the time, it was great. It was much. It was like, I don't know what resolution or anything, but it was much sharper than a television was back in that day.
Yeah, that was AV cords as well, wasn't it?
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was AV cords for sure. And actually, it was because I hooked this one up a couple months ago. But while they were playing, and there's all these guys just huddled around, and we had to I was like tiptoeing on my seat, on my feet to have a look at what they were playing, and there was Phantasy Star playing, and the moment that I've talked about that I will never forget, this is my face, oh my god, because I'd never seen anything like that, and I'm having this moment, and I look over at Andrew, and this is him. And so I wasn't alone in that moment.
Right, and of course, I'd never seen anything like that we weren't even in PCs then, it was still the Apple. I'd never seen anything like that. It was transformative. Nothing like that was something you would get on a computer at that point.
Yeah.
It was revolutionary.
Yeah, and we were really into Dungeons and Dragons, those whole fantasy tabletop role-playing games. We love that stuff, but the idea of being able to play one that looked like a cartoon with anime-style graphics.
Yeah, the anime was the killer part.
That was the killer. That's
really was.
That's what made it extra cool.
Yeah, I mean,
really
you look at the start screen these days, and it seems a little retro, very 8-bit. Yeah. But you got to remember what it was like to see Alice in a portrait like that at the starting screen of Phantasy Star. We'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah, and then you press start, and you got this cinematics of her brother, dying and all that, and kind of showing you a bit of the world of what was going on. And
nothing moving, of course. I mean, this was the late 80s, but still, it was a cinematic. We hadn't seen those either.
And we were just like, oh my god, you can't believe it. And then it starts off in the town, and you're walking around, and you can go talk to people, and and then it cut into a close-up of them. It wasn't just like text would show up as you talk to somebody. You would see a close-up of them, and it made it really like RPG.
Yeah, and walking into the buildings, and the weapon store had the swords and stuff on the back wall. It was like, that was epic.
It was epic.
You weren't just visualizing things that had a text name anymore. You were seeing what the people who made the game wanted you to see.
Because a lot of games back then were like text adventures, the Dungeons and Dragons style things, and all that.
I mean, yeah, we were a little bit past that.
Yeah, with the Ultimas and stuff like that.
Right.
So you're the PC guy. I'm not.
Right, but it wasn't. It wasn't. There was no visualization the way that it happened in Phantasy Star.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Ultimate games, your equipment didn't change how you looked on the screen or anything like that.
Yeah.
You were imagining, I got this new whatever it was, sword or something. You were visualizing it yourself. You weren't seeing what the artist of the game wanted you to see.
And back then, you're right, a lot of video games, it was all about what you could make up in your imagination that you weren't quite getting. But this game was giving you everything. It was giving you like overhead graphics, 3D dungeons, and that's another seller. That's something else that when we saw those she's walking around the town, this Alice character, and we're like, oh, this is amazing. This is already amazing. And he's like, oh, we got to show you this. And they went down into the first dungeon. And we're like, oh my god, you can, what? And then monsters, could appear and stuff. You couldn't believe it.
To see scrolling walls like that on a TV/Commodore monitor. Yeah, I mean, you've had some vector graphics, and I think even Ultima 1 had some vector graphics where the edges were lines. But to see actual smooth scrolling that moved really nicely,
oh my god,
nothing like it.
It blew our minds, and then you left the city and you started fighting monsters and all the variations of monsters, and the monsters had animation.
Yes,
which is a big deal.
A very big deal.
Yeah, huge deal. And then backgrounds had animation as well, So we shared a hell of a moment at that point, and I got to tell a funny story. We we milked that day. We really did. And every nerdy kid in the neighborhood and beyond was fucking there.
We had people from quite a ways away.
Yeah.
Folks who knew what was going on there.
Yeah, they made the Hobbit trip over, you know what I mean, to get there. But what was so funny, so the next day, I kind of woke up, I'm at home, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to wander down there. And I'm like, I'm up really early this morning. It was like 9 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm going to go down there and like hang out with the guys and check more of this game out. I get down, I walk all the way down, and I'm tapping on the back window, and he fucking answers the door. He's like, yeah, hey, and he's like, he's all elite and in with them now. He's like, oh, hey, yeah.
Hey, in my defense, I only had to cross a fence, so it wasn't quite the same effort as it was for
I
me.
just remember him. At that point, things had changed. He was in the elite crowd, and he's like, yeah, can we let John in? It's like, that's just so funny. I'm like pounding at the window, please let me in. Please, like in the rain outside, which
and
was
you got to remember
nice and sunny.
that Phantasy Star wasn't the only thing they came back with.
It was so amazing.
It was almost a religious experience. We didn't know they were coming back with Phantasy Star, so that was the highlight of the time.
Yes.
But they actually came back with a handful of things.
Yeah. Ease, which we all were calling Wise back. Did you call it Wise?
Yeah, I'm sure I did.
I think we all call it Wise. I know I personally
Yeah, whoever labeled it first, until we played it on the Duo, and we heard the voiceover call it Ease.
And we're like,
huh?
My life is a lie. I know. So that was the first time we saw Ease and played it, and that was cool because it was like Zelda, it was overhead.
Right.
That was a very exciting, different style of game.
But it looked better than Zelda. The Master System, I thought, had better colors than the NES.
Did. Very pastel-y, very nice, very vibrant colors. So they had that, and then the other game changer was like we had Phantasy Star going on, we had a bit of Ease, but then we had this game in between called Miracle Warriors. And I swear to God, I didn't even see this one coming. Like, I had seen it. I think I had gone to Hawaii, and I saw it on a shelf in a computer store back then. I was like, oh, what's that? That's cool. I just had a role-playing game on. I was like, wow. And I never thought about it again until
I'd never heard of Miracle Warriors before until I saw the box.
Yeah.
Never even occurred to me.
Yeah, another absolutely fantastic RPG on the Master System back then. And then they also had Kingsfield.
They did.
Not Kingsfield. I mean, King's Quest. King's Quest.
Yeah, that's right. The original King's Quest.
Yes. That I wasn't very good at that game.
And having played it on the computer, that was not terribly impressive.
No.
It's funny to think about it. That was actually the first time I experienced a PC versus a console version. When you came back with Phantasy Star, Miracle Warriors, and Ease, what the fuck?
Anything else?
It really didn't matter what it did. It could have been the ultimate King's Quest experience, and nobody would care.
I gotta say, and I've said it on the show before, that summer was probably one of my best childhood summers for like, I'm in there, enjoying the summer, and then fucking Phantasy Star. Yeah. And it wasn't just one of those things, I've said it so many times, but it changed my life because it was such a big deal. And changed my life in the sense that I was like, I'm a video gamer now. I'm insane about video games. And that's where we kick into some of our other fun stories we've always wanted to talk about, is that Andrew, and there's a reason why we were laughing about this. Andrew was always the guy down the street, fucking subscription to Nintendo goddamn Power. My parents would have never done that for me.
I don't even really remember how that worked. I mean, to set the record straight, it's absolutely not the case that I had every single thing and I would just go and pick
Only
it
the
off
best.
the shelf.
Yeah, you're right about it, but you had the newest, like Final Fantasy 3 before everybody.
Absolutely.
Final Fantasy 2
The point of contention between John and I is that we've always loved the same games.
That's right.
Which meant we were always interested in getting the same games.
Yeah.
And it just sort of worked out at the time. I guess I got a higher allowance and things, and I would only spend my money on games. I would only ever do that. I wasn't going buying candy or...
That's all I ever did too, though.
Well, and
your parents loved you more than me.
There you go. There you go. Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
I love you.
But there was something we were talking about earlier, the reason why.
Right, so... You got to remember that back at the end of the 80s, the Canadian video game scene versus the American video game scene, and of course, by comparison, the Japanese, light years ahead.
Yeah.
Things that happened in Japan, maybe they would trickle into the US. But when they did get to the US, it wasn't automatic to get into Canada.
Yeah.
You still had to, generally, if it came into the US, you had to make it into Canada. You would make it into Canada eventually. I can't think of any...
Later, though.
Yeah, because maybe it was, adding French to the manuals or whatever it is. There's some political kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it could be weeks or months before a game that was available just across the border in the US was actually available in Canada.
Yeah.
And so the advantage I had at the time was that my dad traveled a lot for work. So that frequently took him into the US, and he was perfectly happy to stop by on whatever he was doing and go to a Toys R Us, which was a big deal back in the day. They didn't have Walmarts or Toys R Us. They did have Toys R Us. They didn't have Target or...
We didn't have Target, Fred Meyer.
Right.
In Canada, that's for sure.
So I would kind of give a bit of a wish list to my dad and wish him well in his travels. And when he came back home, I would be, oh, great, Dad, you're home.
I love you. Give me that thing.
What did you bring?
Yeah. That was awesome.
And there were times when, oh, here you go. It didn't mean anything to him. It was just a box of irrelevance. But it made a very big deal to me.
And a very big deal to me because I wasn't getting those things. And it was really weird because you were getting them. Phantasy Star 2 was coming out. It's funny, I don't have that in here. Phantasy Star 2 was coming in, and we were waiting for it, and your dad had picked it up. Like, what's the story with that one?
Yeah, so we knew that Phantasy Star 2 was going to be available in the US at the time.
Yeah.
And I made it a priority to let my dad know that, Dad, this is a huge big deal.
I love you forever.
This is going to be my thing. Can you find Phantasy Star 2? Because he was on a trip to Seattle. And I think he called home or whatever before he left on his trip and said that he didn't have time to go to the store and that he was going to try on his way to the airport. Well, I'm like, okay, I didn't really know what that meant.
That kind of meant not probably.
Yeah. But I can remember one of the few times I ever actually asked my mom, when is Dad coming home? Like, I was like, I don't know, 14 or something, and I wanted to know my dad's flight information.
Really?
Yeah, so that I could figure out, okay, he's going to come in this time. It takes about an hour to get into the airport. So I was upstairs waiting in the kitchen about the time when I figured Dad would show up. And he, I heard the key in the door, and he came in the front. And I run right up to the door. I'm like, Dad, welcome home. Did you get it? And he's like rummaging around his bag, and he gives me the plastic, it was in a plastic bag from the store. And he gave it to me, and I grabbed it like some kind of greedy, starving kid and ran downstairs. And
awesome.
I'm sure my dad was happy to be home, but he didn't see me for a while.
Oh my God, that is fucking an amazing story. Because we were reading, that game was so hyped up, we were waiting for so long. We played Phantasy Star, we loved it. So number 2 was coming out on the Genesis, which we all had back then. And you got it, and I just remember, coming over and checking out the big manual that came with, and it was weeks and weeks and weeks, and it still hadn't come into Canada. Yeah. And that's actually an interesting point, is I guess back in those days, they assumed that the Japanese gamer was far beyond the rest of us. Yeah. So when they released Phantasy Star 2 in North America, but America specifically, it actually shipped with a strategy guide. Yeah. The entire game was laid out in a full-on strategy guide that came inside, a really thick guide. Yeah. And we'd never seen that before. Yeah. But you could even without playing the game, if you wanted to, we weren't doing spoilers or anything, but you could look and see what was going on in the world. Yeah. And that was unprecedented. I don't think there had been a strategy guide before, had there? Didn't Vermilion? Yeah, Vermilion got one too, didn't it? Like years later, I got Vermilion somewhere.
Yeah, good question.
Vermilion.
I think yes it did. Yes, it did.
Yeah. I think something like that for sure. But yeah, all those.
But
Genesis
Vermilion
games
came after Phantasy Star 2,
It certainly
right?
did. Yeah, absolutely. And you got that one as well.
I did.
I was just wandering down. You're like playing Vermilion. That was Yu Suzuki's first RPG. That's an interesting one.
And it's a goodie. It's a goodie. That opening theme.
Yeah. I remember coming down your basement going, fucking lightning strike again for this guy.
So I will definitely own up to being an asshole, and part of it is that when I would get whatever the new hotness was, it's not like the first thing I would do would be to get on the phone with Johnny and have him come down and watch.
No.
There was always at least some amount of personal enjoyment time where I would get into this thing before I actually made it an announcement.
Yeah.
And then John would come down and like, oh, fuck.
So I dealt with this with so many games. Metroid, I go to his basement, he's playing that. Strider was over there. He doesn't remember he got that, but he had Strider over there. Zelda, Link to the Past. I remember going over to his place, knocking on his door, and I'm like, I know he's there because he didn't go to school this morning. Knocking on the door, and I was knocking forever, and he's like, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? I've been playing Zelda. It's like nonchalant. You did that all the fucking time. Like, it's not even a big fucking deal. Yeah, I'm playing Zelda. So I'm fucking crazy. I'm like, can I see you? Like, Oh, okay. Yeah.
I never spent a week in the closet playing Dragon Warrior, but
No, it was Thunder Force.
it was Thunder Force.
Thunder Force, yeah.
You didn't play Dragon Warrior 2? I mean,
Well, Dragon Warrior 2, I just played in the basement.
Okay.
I took the risk of playing it without skipping school. And Andrew's the one that I was walking to school with in the morning.
Yeah.
Back in when Dragon Warrior 2, which was Dragon Quest 2, came out on the NES. We're walking down, and we had to walk down these long flight of stairs every day because we walked to school together every single day. I got to the bottom, and I looked at the track all out there, and it was so funny. I'm just like, I sat there and I smoked back then. I lit my cigarette, and I'm like, and he's like, and I stop, and he's still walking. He looks back. He's like, "Why are you stopping?" And I'm like, "I'm taking 2 weeks off." And he's like,
Yeah.
"You can't do that." I'm like, "Oh yes, I can." Yeah. And I'm like, "I'm out here. See ya." I got Dragon Warrior 2, and I went back and I played Dragon. I don't skip school, guys. And I remember that.
Stay
one.
in
Stay in school. yeah. But you know, I went back and I played Dragon Warrior 2, and I had a religious experience there too. It was phenomenal, you know, type of thing. But you know, back to like talking about Phantasy Star, we were talking about. It was so funny that everybody's playing Phantasy Star, and I had my NES, and I'm like, well, I need my fix because my parents wouldn't buy me Phantasy Star after we saw all our friends. I think you got a Master System. Just
I
after
had
that.
a Master System, but I don't know if I ever had Phantasy Star.
You probably bored. You bored. it off
Yeah, that's right. I would have borrowed it off.
So he's getting sloppy seconds of that, and I'm just down the street. So the closest thing I got, and it was disappointing at the time. Don't get me wrong, it's a classic, and I loved it, and I finished it. Dragon Warrior. But imagine playing Dragon Warrior, wishing it was Phantasy Star. It was very, very hard back then. It never could quite live up to it. But we also have another mutual memory. Our parents, for some unknown reason, we went to San Francisco. I don't know where you went. You went to Reno?
I think we ended up in LA, but we went through Reno.
Yeah. And so you went through Reno, and I stopped in Reno. We were both gone for the summer on our own separate vacations with our own families. And we got home. But the weird thing is we found out that we both went past Reno at exactly the same time. And we both stopped at the same Toys R Us and bought Final Fantasy 1. Because we got back, I'm like, what'd you get there? Oh, I got Reno. What day? We checked it all out. I was there too. I was there like 2 hours later. And there was like one copy left, and I grabbed it. I'm like, oh my god, Final Fantasy 1. And that was a big deal. And Dragon Warrior 1 was a little bit disappointing. Final Fantasy 1 kind of gave you that feeling of Phantasy Star. It gave you that.
And by then, you know, we had the Nintendo powers, and we knew what was going on. We knew that Final Fantasy 1 was coming out,
yeah.
And we were hyped for it. You know, it was a big deal. In fact, I can remember being in the hotel in Reno because it was so hot you had to be somewhere where there was AC.
Yeah.
And I opened the box, and for folks who were there at the day when they were able to get Final Fantasy 1, they had a poster-sized sheet that you could unfold, and it showed all the monsters
in the back. Yeah.
And I remember just I was poring over this open sheet on the bed in the hotel room. I didn't care what was going on outside. I don't know where they were.
I think it had a map on the other side.
I think so, like a world map.
I think so.
Like maybe hand drawn or something.
We're trying to remember, yeah.
But I remember the monster compendium on the back.
Yeah, it was cool. And
we'd never seen anything like that.
And back then, you had no internet. So you would fawn over the instruction manual. That's why people read the instruction manuals back then. Yeah. A lot of times, you know, for the artwork and all that, you'd pour in it because that was the only information that you had on the game. You couldn't go online. There was none of that, and you know, so it's kind of interesting how much you really got into your games and your manuals and your posters, and you would be driving back from Reno and just be reading. Oh my god!
And the manufacturers knew that people would actually look at instruction manuals. Yeah. Today, nobody looks at instruction manuals, so I'm sure they do a professional job and all that, but they don't really put a tremendous amount of effort into it like they used to.
There's no need. You download the fucking manual.
Right. So now it used to be that they would have art, and it was part of the experience.
Yeah, it's funny. So guys, that's our first little episode together. Andrew's only out here for 1 week, and so we thought we'd just do an episode because it's been 7 years. Andrew came up for my wedding last year. Sorry, motorcycle bastards outside.
2 years.
Yeah, well, 2 years ago. He came out for the wedding 2 years ago, and you were here for like one night. You came over here.
We were only here for the weekend, so obviously there was a lot of
festivities going on.
A lot of stuff going on. It was crazy. John and Kim were just, mental after that weekend.
Trying to get married.
It wasn't time. So
there was no time to make a video, and I was like, oh my god, when's this going to happen? And then Andrew phoned me up saying, hey, I'm going to come out for about a week. I'm like, oh my god, this is fantastic. So we're going to do a bunch more videos this week and just talk about stuff and have fun in general. And so amazing to have you on the show after 7 years.
Glad to finally be here. It's been a long time coming.
30 years coming. So anyways, guys, until next time.